all the crises we're facing today, I see so many people just giving up. I hear again and again people saying, it's the human race. Human beings should be annihilated from this planet. And I find that it is so sad that more people have not had experience of non-Western cultures to understand that this is not a question of the human race. This is not our nature. We are not innately greedy and corrupt and aggressive. There is a culture that's gone very wrong, and it's a culture of consumerism and waste. It's a culture of mindless, basically following orders from centralized sources. So there were all these social signs, psychological signs, that this way of life was not conducive to human health and happiness. At the same time, this industrializing top-down model destroyed small-scale, diversified agriculture, smaller-scale businesses. Everything was pushed towards larger and larger scale monoculture. And that clearly didn't work ecologically. Monoculture is antithetical to life. And so once you start pushing monocultures, whether it's forestry, fishery, or farming, you become dependent on toxic chemicals to try to keep things growing and alive. So diversification on the land, community building, smaller scale enterprise is, from my point of view, clearly the way forward. I think in this incredibly complex world today, we need to pursue a two-track approach. It's what I call resistance and renewal. It can feel almost schizophrenic, but that's almost what we have to practice. It's what I call sort of creative schizophrenia. Because on the one hand, we know that we need to slow down, we need to scale down, we need to localize, we need to find peace of mind at the inner level, and we need to give ourselves time to do that. We need to nurture ourselves and others and our gardens around us. On the other hand, we've got huge global problems. The pace of negative change is enormous, and many of us have been drawn to an activism, to fight that system and to do something about it. I believe that there is a way that we can work on both tracks, and I feel that in terms of addressing the bigger problems, one of the key elements is to realize that all of that activism, until now, was not addressing the root cause. The root cause behind almost all the serious crises had to do with the scale of the economic system. It had to do with something that was bigger than capitalism, communism, and socialism combined, because it went back all the way to colonialism and slavery. Once we can get our head around that bigger picture and see that it was to do with the scale of enterprise, of individual big companies like the East India Company, already back then, hundreds of years ago, imposing monoculture, imposing also a type of slavery, imposing debt. Once we start seeing that, it was the economic system, there is hope there that today is the time to join a movement for economic change. And that one of the first pieces of activism is awareness, because that big picture has been buried and it's being subverted and manipulated all the time to get us focused on individual countries. The Greek economy is collapsing because they're all corrupt. We have analyses that keep us from seeing the bigger picture, and that keep us from focusing on the scale of business, and particularly the global scale of multinational corporations and banks. Once that becomes clearer, we can see that we can be quite active in this, if you like, resistance part, in this campaigning part, by helping to get the word out. We might well need to march in the streets. Hopefully it won't be that far off, that we will see major political change, either because the middle classes, the majority of people, are out there in the streets demanding change, or because we put enough pressure on government representatives, and they're actually starting to implement the changes that we, civic society, demand. And the good news is that once we really get it about the local economy stuff, we can actually start joining the initiatives that are beginning to build a new local economy. And the most fundamental and the most life-giving is the local food movement. And so there are things we can start doing right now that will enrich and enhance our lives and that are already working all around the world. So there's definitely room for some hope and optimism.